All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Hopefully, everyone had a beautiful, uplifting, magnificent, inspiring Yom Tiv. Baruch Hashem was a great source to be able to learn with the Olam here. And let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Nisan, Paul and Kathy Pollack, for dedicating all of his Sherman Drushos this month in memory of Paul's parents, Shmuel ben Zechariah and Sarah bas Avram, and to thank Avram and Shane D. Kalman for dedicating his Shurim this month in memory of Avram's mother, Sarah Braina bas Yoshua Heschel, Zechron Lebracha. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamos will have an Aliyah and the families in Nechama. Today's daf is Daf Tes Zayin 16. And Baruch Hashem, we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Tes Vav on days 15b, and we are picking up 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. So some really interesting Gemara. Today, remember again, we left off in the Mishnah, which was detailing the process of the Sotah once her carbon mincha has been offered. So the Gemara, or as her carbon mincha is being offered. So the Gemara said, the Mishnah said, Nichnas lahechal, when the Kohen walks into the Hechal, walks into the Beis HaMikdash, so panali imino, he turns to his right. Remember again, we're describing the process here through which he goes ahead and collects the dirt to be able to be used in the water-dirt mixture for the Sotah. So the Gemara says as follows, how do you know, my taima, why is it that he goes ahead and turns towards the right? To which the Gemara says, Amar Mar, Kolpinos sha'atapona lo yihu ela derech yamin. Whenever deciding which direction to go in, go right. It's not a political statement, right? It's not a hashkafic statement, but rather, again, it's reflective of the idea that the right always has a dominance and an importance associated with it. Therefore, again, we see this even when the Kohen has to do on the Mizbeach, even when he has to do certain things on different areas of the Mizbeach, he always goes in a rightward direction. Incredible. Makom Shaya Sham Amma. So remember again, the Mishnah then described that there was an Amma by Amma piece, right? There was an Amma by Amma square, a marble slab that had a ring on it, and it was there ultimately again that the Kohen would lift it up, take dirt from underneath there. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, Makom Shaya Amma Tanabanan. So remember again, so the Torah, when detailing the process of the Sotah, tells us that the Kohen has to go ahead and take it from Mina Afar Asher Yihya Bekarka HaMishkan. He has to take the dirt from the floor, from the floor of the Mishkan. So the Gemara says, listen to this. So from that phrase, from the dirt that will be there, so you might have thought that maybe he could prepare the dirt outside of the mikdash and then bring it inside. Talmud Lomar bekarka hamishkan. Therefore, the Torah says no on the karka from the floor of the mishkan itself. Bekarka mishkan. If it's from the floor of the mishkan, yachol yachbar bekar dumos. You might have thought that maybe you mamish have to dig. You should take out your shovels and literally again start digging. Talmud Lomar Asher Yihya, that which is there. Now, also the Gemara is understanding Asher Yihya to mean like readily available without having to engage in intensive digging. So how Kate says, so we'll say, so which one is it? In other words, it seems to be two contradictory inferences. Mina Afar tells me that Lamaisa, again, you can't prepare the dirt on the outside and ultimately go ahead and bring it in, right? Mina Karka, from Karka HaMishkan, sounds like it has to be readily available right there. So how do you reconcile that? HaKetzad, Yesh Sham Have. If there is loose dirt readily available on the floor of the Mishkan, when we say Mishkan, we'll see Mishkan includes everything. Mishkan, Mikdash, if there's dirt readily available on that floor, great. Ein Sham, what if there's not loose dirt readily available there? What should you do? So Tein Sham, bring dirt from the outside, go ahead and put it underneath the slab, and that way it's there. In other words, there is the possibility to transport dirt from outside the mikdash into the mikdash, as long as what? You first put it on the ground of the mikdash. Because what happens when you put it on the ground? What happens when you put it there? What happens? It becomes part of the earth of the mikdash. What can't you do? So what can't you do? You can't take dirt from outside the mikdash and directly mix that into the spring water for the Sotah. In other words, it's got to be placed down on the earth of the mikdash. Once you do that, then it becomes part of the mikdash itself, and then Lamaisi you can use it after. As well as an incredible Moser Haskell that sometimes You could take something that is unconsecrated, and as long as you attach it to something holy, the unholy item becomes holy itself. And if it works for dirt, it certainly works for us. That sometimes I want to become kadosh in life. So of course, the goal would be I could self-inspire. The goal would be that I could lift myself up. Sometimes in life, whatever the reason, like it's the day after Yom Tov, I'm just too tired. I can't self-inspire. Right? So I'll say, so what do you do in those moments of life when you can't self-inspire? What do? You attach yourself to something holy. Right? Attach yourself to something holy. It's an incredible yesod. And if you attach yourself to something holy, by definition, that holiness attachment fills you with holiness as well. Whether it's attaching yourself to holy people, whether it's putting yourself in a physical place of holiness, sometimes if you can't, in Chassidus, there's a phrase of is orusa dilatasa, which literally means an inspiration from below, self-inspiration. Sometimes when you can't self-inspire, attach yourself to holy people, put yourself in a holy place, and the inspiration will come. An incredible yisod. On the brisa, when the pasuk says, from the dirt that will be there, so this is actually interesting. This brisa actually has the version, or the process has, they would actually take dirt from outside of the mikdash, bring it into the mikdash, right? Lift up the marble slab, put the earth down. At that point, that earth itself now becomes like earth of the mikdash, and then they would take it. The karka hamishkan, what do I learn from that phrase, karka hamishkan? Isi ben Yehuda Omer, what does that come to teach me? Lahavi karka tapav tazayin. Shiloh, Nov, Givon, Ubeis Olamim. So Rabbi say this comes to include, because also remember again, what's interesting about this pasuk is that the pasuk uses the lashon of karka hamishkan. Karka hamishkan. So interestingly enough, why is that phrase here? Why? So again, Isi ben Yehuda says Hamishkan comes to include any place of consecration. Now, again, when I say any, it means the Mishkan. Now, this is referring to the Mishkan in all of its different locations, right? The Mishkan was in Shiloh, in Nov, and Givon. And then Beis Olamim refers to the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash. So the Sotah process can be administered as long as there is a central house of worship. And the halacha is the same, which is you're taking dirt from the floor of that central house of worship. Incredible. Isi ben Menachem says, no. Eino tzarech. The truth is, Karka HaMishkan is needed to teach us the Mishkan in the desert, the Mishkan in Shiloh, Nov, and Givon. But Isi ben Menachem says, you don't need the pasuk to teach you the Beis HaMikdash. Why not? This is fascinating. Uma betumakala lo chalak hakosov. Now, also when it comes to tumakala. Now, what's tumakala? Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, tumakala, likanis betumas haguf lemikdash, she'ena b'misas bezdin elakaris, lo chilek hakosov bein mikdash lemishkan. So Rabbi say this is very interesting. It's fascinating. When the Gemara talks about tumakala, Rashi understands over here is talking about tumas haguf. Tumas haguf. But right, literally again, a person is physically impure. Rabbi say if you walk into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of physical impurity, you don't get misas bezdin. There's not in other words, you're not executed by a court. You get karis. The Gemara calls that tumakala. Tumakala. We often look at right. It calls it tumakala. So we'll say if when it comes to tumakala, physical impurity, there's no distinction between what? Between the Mishkan and the Mikdash. So certainly when it comes to Tuma Chamura, right, Tumas Eishes Ish Chamura, Lo Kol Shekin. Now I will say Tumas Eishes Ish is considered to be Tuma Chamura. Why? Because she's executed. In other words, I will say anything you're executed for by a Beis Din is considered to be more chamer than something that you receive kares for. So halacha l'mais, what the Gemara is saying is like this: if you're going to go ahead and if the halacha of tuma kala apply in the Beis Hamikdash, tuma sagov, certainly tuma chamura is going to apply in the Beis Hamikdash as well. So Isi ben Menachem says, you don't need Karka HaMishkan to teach you the Beis HaMikdash. It's obvious that the Beis HaMikdash is included in all of these halachas. Right? The Karka HaMishkan teaches me wherever the Mishkan is, right? Whether that be the deserts, Shiloh, Nov, and Givon. Incredible. Mishkan. So isi bemenachem. If you don't need Karka Mishkan to teach you the Mikdash, so what does Karka Mishkan come to teach you? Shelo yavi mitoch kupaso. Very interesting. We'll say what it means is that halacha l'maisa, you can't use dirt from your kupa, from your basket. In other words, that if you have dirt, so we'll say this: if you have dirt that you let's say gathered from outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and you brought it in a receptacle, you cannot use the dirt from that receptacle for the Sotah process, right? Others will say, so just to be clear, can you bring dirt from outside of the Mikdash to be used in the Sotah process? Yes. But what do you have to do with it? You have to put it down on the karka of the Mikdash. Right? This has to happen. So according to Isi ben Menachem, Bekarka Mishkan teaches me that you can't bring dirt, right, in a receptacle from outside of the Mishkan and just use that directly. Rather, that dirt would first have to be placed down on the actual floor of the Mikdash. Incredible. Ibaylahu, Ein Sham Afar, Ma'u Sheyitain Efer. So this is very interesting. What happens if there's no dirt? No dirt. Let's say again, the case over here is there's no dirt available. What do you have? Ash. Ash. Can you use ash in a mixture of sotah instead of dirt? To which the Gemara says, interesting. Aliba de Beis Shammai, lo tibaylecha. So according to Beis Shammai, this is not a shayla. The Amri, lo matzino efer shekaroi afar. In other words, Beis Shammai holds that we never find ash that is called dirt. So kiti bailacha, where does the machlokes come up? Where does the shayla come up? Alibud Beis Hillel, according to Beis Hillel, who says matzinu efer shekaroi afar. Because Beis Hillel holds we find that sometimes ash is referred to as dirt. Now, what is this talking about? I will say, if you take a look in Rashi, it's actually Rashi right across. You'll see there's no bolded divrei hamaschil, but it's right after the two dots. Plukta, literally right across in Rashi. Just move your finger to the right. Plukta de Beis Shammai Beis Hillel b'shchitas chulin. This is machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel in chulin. Gabe kisui hadam. We know that there's a halacha if you shecht a chaya. Chaya is a non-domestic animal. So, for example, deer, right? Deer is kosher. If you shecht the deer, there's a halacha called kisui hadam. Kisui, that means you have to cover the blood. Cover the blood. So now watch this. So Rashi says over here, Gabe kisui hadam. Alibud Beis Hillel the Amri efer karei afar dichsiv. The Chula Tameme Afar Sreifas Achatas. Beis Shammai Omer, supposed to listen to this. So the Torah, when discussing the mitzvah of Kisei Hadam, says that you are supposed to go ahead and cover the blood with dirt. So there's machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, can you use ash instead of dirt? Beis Hillel says, Beis Shammai says, Beis Hillel says yes, Beis Shammai says no. Beis Shammai says no. So we'll say, so that's machlokes b'kisei Adam. So now what the Gemara is asking is a parallel discussion, which is, let's say by the Sotah, there is no dirt, there's no afar available. Can you use afer? Can you use afer? Can you use ash? So b'pashtos, according to Beis Hillel, who says that afar and afar are interchangeable, like we saw by kisei Adam, so too by Sotah, if you don't have afar, you could use afer. What about according to Beis Shammai? According to Beis Shammai says, by Kisei Adam, they're not interchangeable. Are they interchangeable by Sotah? To which the Gemara says, Mai, afagav de ikri afar, hacha bekarka mishkan ksiv. So we'll say, do we say on one hand, even according to Beis Hillel, who normally says that afar and afer are interchangeable, maybe by Sotah it's different. Why? Because the Torah goes out of its way to say, you have to take offer from where? Karka HaMishkan. Maybe Karka Mishkan is Dafka teaching you that what? It Dafka has to be dirt and cannot be ash. Oh, Dilma, Hai Bekarka Mishkan Isi Ben Yehuda. So also Uchidi Isi Ben Menachem Uda Asi. Or maybe, no. Karka Mishkan is coming to teach you that what? That Allah Chalamaisa, like we saw by Isi Ben Yehuda, that is coming to include the Mishkan in all of its different locations, or Isi ben Menachem, who's coming to teach you that you can't go ahead and use dirt from outside of the Beis HaMikdash if it remained in a utensil was never put on the floor of the Beis HaMikdash. So what's the answer? So Tashma, Tam Rabbi Yochanan Mishra Rabbi Shmuel, This is very interesting. B'shloshim makomos, halacha o keves mikra Torah. Sorry, mikra. We'll say in 3 places we have instances of a halacha. Remember again, what's halacha? Halacha is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that overrides what appears to be an explicit pasuk. Right? 3 instances where the Torah says something, and it sounds like a halacha l'Moshe Sinai overrides that particular pasuk. Watch this. HaTorah Amra ba'afar v'alacha b'kol davar. So we'll say, right? So again, remember, first example is the Torah says by kisi adam, you shecht a non-domestic animal, right? You have to cover its blood with dirt. Torah says dirt. Yet what does the halacha l'Moshe Sinai say? You could cover it with anything. Anything. So a good example of a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that seems to override an explicit pasuk. That's one. Number 2, HaTorah Amra B'tar. The Torah says ultimately again that the Nazir is not allowed to shave with a razor. V'halacha b'chol davar. So as yet we know that the Nazir is not permitted to shave with anything. So the Torah says you can't use a razor, yet the halacha is you can't shave with anything. Number 3, HaTorah Amar Sefer, that a get has to be written on a sefer. V'halacha b'chol davar. And yet the halacha is you're allowed to write a get on anything. On anything. So we'll say, so these are 3 examples, ultimately again, of where what? Where the pasuk seems to indicate that the halacha is a certain way, and the halacha l'Moshe Sinai seems to override an explicit pasuk. The Gemara says, but one second. Let's take a step. We'll say, what's our question we're dealing with over here? What's our question? Our question is, can you use afer for the sotah? If I don't have dirt, can I go ahead and use ash? And I both say, here's what's interesting. Vim Isa, if it was true that you could use ash instead of afar, lechshov nami hai. It should be included in this list. Because I will say again, the ability to use afer for sotah would be a perfect example of what? Of a halacha l'Moshe Sinai overriding an explicit pasuk. Because remember again, what does the pasuk say by sotah? What does the pasuk say by sotah? V'lakach me'afar hamishkan, right? Sorry, v'lakach. The pasuk is umina afar asher yihye bekarka mishkan. So say if you can really use afer, that would be another example of where you have a halacha l'Moshe Sinai overriding an explicit pasuk in the Torah. To which the Gemara says, no, ton of a shear. So what's ton of a shear? It's not an exhaustive list, right? When we said there are 3, there's really more than 3. We're leaving some things off the list. So it's possible that you can even use ash, but we're just not creating an exhaustive list. Says the Gemara, umay shear the high shear. So what was left off? In other words, you can't just say stuff like that. If you're going to tell me something was left off the list, tell me what was left off the list. So it's incredible. Shear mitzora. Listen to this. It leaves off the case of Mitzorah. What happens now is our Desanya, Vayaba Yom HaShvi, Yigalach is called Sa'aro. The pasuk says, on the 7th day of his purification, he will shave off all of his hair. So it was like klal. That phrase is a klal, right? A general statement. Then it says, Es Rosho, Ves Zikano, Ves Gabosenov. Then it says, his hair, his beard, his eyebrows, prat. That's a prat, a specific statement. Ves Kol Sa'aro Yigaleach. Then it says again, he shall shave off all of his hair. Chazar the klal. So we'll say, what do you see from here? That's another klal. So what do you see from this? Klal, uprat, uklal. So what do you have? You have a general statement, a specific statement, and another general statement. So what's the halacha? Iyatadan elakeina prat. Ultimately, we'll say in this case, the klal is defined through the prism of the prat. How so? Ma prat mufurash makom kinus seyar vinira. So we'll say, what is the prat? The prat tells us any part of the body where there is a gathering of hair and it's seen. Af kom makom kinus seyar vinira. So what does it come to include? What does a nazir have to shave? Any hair on the body which is gathered and seen needs to be removed. Ma Rabbi, what does it come to include? Rabbi Ser Haraglayim. The Rabbi Ser actually points out that Ser Haraglayim is a euphemism for pubic hair. That the Nazir has to even go ahead and shave off his pubic hair. Because again, that's gathered and it's seen. When a person is unclothed, it's seen. Uma mi'et. So we'll say, what does it exclude? What doesn't a Nazir have to shave? It's very interesting. Mi'et, the base hashechi, udekule gufei. It means he doesn't have to shave the hair of his armpits and the hair on the rest of his body. So what does that mean? The hair on the armpits, I understand. Why? Because again, it's not seen. It's not seen, right? Furthermore, it means the hair on the rest of his body. So let's say, if you can imagine, what it's referring to is the hair on your legs and on your arms. Why did I say? Because even though that hair is seen, what is it not? It's not gathered. It's not gathered. It's very interesting. So in other words, the Nazir only has to go ahead and shave hair that's both gathered, right? Gathered and seen. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Udekule gufei. So the Gemara says, fine. Udekule by miet udekule gufei. Now we'll say, so that's based on the pasuk, right? So what does the pasuk essentially teach? So remember again, the psukim themselves, we have a klal, uprat, uklal. And based on that, what emerges is, you have to shave hair. What kind of hair? Gathered and seen. And yet Rabbi say, what does the halacha l'Moshe Misinai say? And the halacha l'Moshe the hilchasa megaleach kidalas. This is great. Rabbi say, what does the halacha l'Moshe Misinai say? You have to be as smooth as a gourd, right? Which means what? Shave everything's got to go. Shave everything. So we'll say, here's another incredible example of where you have a halacha l'Moshe Misinai that seems to go ahead and upend a pasuk. So the point the Gemara is making over here is, we just gave 3 examples of where you have a halacha l'Moshe Misinai which upends a pasuk, but in no way is the list exhaustive. Right? Vaharaya, Mitzorah was left off, to which the Gemara said, listen to this. This nan, Mitzorah, when you come to shave the Mitzorah, so what do? Ma'avir tar al kol besaro. You go ahead and you put the razor literally over his entire body. V'katani seifa, and we learned in the seifa, Bayom Hashvi, on the 7th day of his purification process, Megalcho taglachas shnia, kedalachas rishona. We do for him a second shaving like the first one. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? A perfect example of a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, totally upending a pasuk, and yet again, it's not included in this list. So you see here that when the Gemara gave 3 examples of halachos l'Moshe Misinai, which go ahead and upend psukim, it doesn't mean to be an all-exhaustive list. And therefore, I will say, remember, coming full circle. What's our shayla? Let's go. What's our shayla? Can you use afer instead of afar? The fact that if you could use aver, the fact that that's not included in this list in no way poses a problem for us. Good. Listen to this. When we include in this list, kika choshev, halacha okeves mikra. So we'll say ultimately again, when we include in this list, we're talking about a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, which mamish will say okeves literally means like undermines, right? Literally uproots. We're talking about, again, a case of halacha l'Moshe Misinai, which totally uproots a pasuk. Ha, in the case of Mitzorah, okeves midrabanan. So I'll say, ultimately, again, it's not okeves a pasuk, but rather I will say what it is it uproots a drabanan. So Rapapa says, ki kachashiv halacha okeves v'okeres. Furthermore, again, we'll say the list is filled with examples of things that undermine and uproot. Ha, the case of Mitzorah, okeves umusefesi. It was very interesting, right? In the case, the reason why Mitzorah is not included in this list is because our list refers to things that ultimately, again, what? Okeves, undermine, and okeres, and totally uproot. The Mitzorah case, I will say, it does undermine, but what does it really do? It adds on to that which we gleaned from the psukim. Because remember, again, like we just said before, the Mitzorah drasha actually ends up requiring you to do more than what the pasuk itself would have told you. Incredible. So the Gemara says, good. Rav Ashi Amar, Hamas Nisamani, whose opinion does this Mishnah reflect? Rabbi Shmuel, what does Rabbi Shmuel say? The Darish Klali Upadi. So we'll say, remember again, the Bryce or the Mishnah that we just quoted before, that essentially, remember, I just want to point out what's happening over here. In the Mitzorah case, the Mitzorah is being darshaned through the prism of a klal and prat and klal. What's the result of that drasha? What do you have to shave? Any hair that's what? Gathered and seen, which would exclude what? which would exclude armpit hair, right? And the truth is, what we'll call really just like general body hair, right? Because although body hair is visible, it's not gathered. So, right, then the halacha l'Moshe Misinai says, shave everything. Now I will say, when I watch this, whose opinion is reflected in our Mishnah? Rabbi Shmuel. Now what does Rabbi Shmuel do? The darish klali uprati. Remember, Rabbi Shmuel is one of the darshins, klal and prat, amud beis. So kidala'as, money. So we'll say, but ultimately, again, the halacha that says that you have to be as smooth as a gourd. Right? So we'll say, whose drasha is that? That's Rabbi Akiva he, the darish ribui umeute. That's actually a result of Rabbi Akiva's drasha. Rabbi Akiva darshins a ribui and a miot. Where do we see this? Watch this. Tisanyo. Torah says on the seventh day, he will shave all of his hair, riba. So we'll say that's a ribui. Es rosho ve'es zikarno ve'es kabos enough. His head, right, his beard and his eyebrows, mi'et. That's an exclusionary phrase. Ve'es kol sa'aro yigalach, and he shall shave all of his hair. Chazar v'riba. That's a ribui again. So riba, umi'et uriba. Shabbos says, so what happens when you have a ribui, a mi'ut and a ribui? Riba hakol. That comes to include everything. What is everything over here? My riba the kule gufe. It comes to include the hair on all of his body. Umay mi'et, what does it come to exclude? So mi'et seyar shebeso chachotam. It comes to exclude nose hair. He doesn't have to shave nose hair. So I just want to point out something very interesting. What the Gemara is pointing out over here is, when it comes to Mitzorah, you don't have to get into this whole halacha Moshe Misinai uprooting a pasuk. The truth is, it's just a machlokes and exegetical principles. According to the opinion that darshans it through a klal upratu klal, you need the halacha Moshe Misinai. According to Rabbi Akiva, who darshans ribui, miut, and ribui, what's the result? You're shaving everything. The only thing you don't have to remove is what? Nose hair. Okay, so the Gemara says, my havi Allah. By the way, right? I'll say back to our regularly scheduled program. So what is the answer to our question? Remember again, what was our question? If you don't have athar, can you use afer? Right? So I don't have dirt, can I use ash? That's the shaila. So Tashma, Damrav Huna Barashi Amrav, Ein Sham Athar. Listen to this. If you don't have dirt, maybe Rakruvis Yerek Umekadesh. So we'll say, what can you use? You can use ultimately again. We'll say, so Rakruvis Yerek means if you have decomposing vegetables, right? So decomposing vegetables ultimately again decompose into compost, right? So you can use that. You could use that for the Sotah water, right? So you could use that. Literally, we'll say Rakruvis Yaris. It's saying, it's calling it the dust of decomposed vegetables. So we'll say, we'll say, why is the Gemara bringing this in? What is this a raya for? The fact that you could use this, the Gemara says, means that what? You could also use ash. So you see, you could use things other than dirt. To which the Gemara says, no. Velohi. Rakruves yereku tahavi afar, afer lo havi afar. The Rebbe says it's very different. You see, the dust of decomposed vegetables is considered what? It's considered dirt, right? Why is it considered dirt? It comes from the ground and it goes back into the ground. That's very different than afer, very different than ash. Ash is a foreign material, right? Ash is not from the ground. So in other words, the Gemara is bringing the dust of the decomposing vegetables as a raya that you should be able to use afer, that you should be able to use ash. But Allah the Gemara says, no, that's not true. The dust of decomposing vegetables is similar to afar. That's why it could be used, but maybe afer can't be used. So I say, how do we paskin? So listen to this. So this is in Hilchos Sotah, Perek Dalet Halacha Yud Beis. So first of all, two halachas over here. Number one, Lo haya sham afar behechal, mevi afar mibachutz, umanicho behechal, velokeach mimena v'noseh apnei hamayim. So we'll say, listen to this. What if there was no dirt in the Beis HaMikdash? So we'll say, so step one, what do? Right, step one, bring dirt from outside the Mikdash. Then what? Place it on the front of us. When we say place it on the front, what does that mean? You lift up the slab, right? Lift up the Amma Ba'Amma slab. Take the dirt that you brought by the outside. Go ahead and place it on the ground of the Harabayas. And suddenly again, that becomes Beis HaMikdash dirt. Let's say, like we said before, the not just halacha l'maisa, v'hashkafa l'maisa, when you take something unconsecrated, attach it to something holy, ultimately, again, it becomes holy. It works for dirt, it works for us. So l'maisa, that's step one. So if you don't have dirt in the mikdash, take dirt from the outside, put it on the ground floor of the harabayis, tada, it becomes consecrated, now you can use it. What happens if there's no dirt? So now the Rambam paskins, the eno maybe aether, aval maybe rak buvis shehika afar. I would say you cannot use ash. You cannot use ash. Now what can you use? You can use the dust of decomposed vegetables, right? That you can use, right? Because that has the status of afar itself, but you cannot use aether. You cannot use ash for the Sotah process. That is how the Rambam paskins. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Let's go weiter. Kidei shirap mayim. So as I remember again, next part of the Mishnah says you take the dirt. You take the dirt, and what do? You mix it in the water. Now, both say when mixing the dirt in the water, the dirt itself, the Mishnah said, kidei shirap mayim, which means what? The dirt has to be visible on the water. It has to be visible. So let's analyze. Sotah Rabbanon, Shlosh Tzrich and Shiiru. There are three things that need to be seen when mixed into water. Afar Sotah, the dirt of the Sotah, right? Afar Para, the ash, right? The really Afar Para, the ash of the Para Dumram is also mixed in with water. It has to be visible in the water. The Rok Yevama, interesting. And the spit of the Yevama, right? When the Yevama spits on that, on the shoe of the Yavam, that spit, that saliva, has to be visible on his shoe. Good. Rabbi Shmuel says, Af dam tzipor, even the blood of the bird. Now, what is this referring to? So this is referring ultimately again to the Mitzorah. So as we spoke about this in yesterday's daf, look at Rashi. Af dam tzipor, shamatzorah, sheshochtu al kli cheres al mayim chayim, v'tzarak shelo yitin mayim el keshir shei dam tzipor nikam. So listen to this, very important. So halacha l'maisa, very quickly. What's the process by Mitzorah? How many birds by Mitzorah? 2 birds. So remember again, what do you do by Mitzorah? You have an earthenware vessel. A little chazar from yesterday's daf. What type of earthenware vessel? Brand new, right? You fill it up with water. What kind of water? Spring water. Excellent. Guys are good, right? Then what do you do? I will say, then you go ahead, you shecht one of the birds, and I will say, where do you receive that blood? Where do you receive the blood? In the earthenware vessel, new earthenware vessel, filled with the spring water, right? You put the blood in there. Now, remember, what do? Right? Then you have the living bird, right? Again, hyssop, cedar wood, scarlet wool. What do? Dip that combination into the blood water, right? Blood water, right? And then you sprinkle that on the Mitzorah. That's the process. So Rabbi Shmuel says, the blood of the shechted bird that you receive in the earthenware vessel with the spring water, the blood has to be visible in that water as well. So my time, Rabbi Shmuel, what does Rabbi Shmuel say? That the pasuk says you shall literally again immerse them in the dam of the tzipor. So you see over here that even when the dam is mixed in with the spring water, it still has to be dam hatzipor. Meaning what? The blood has to be recognizable. Tanya, we learned, bedam, yochel bedam v'lo b'mayim. You might have thought maybe you just have to dip it in the dam and not in the water. Sorry, Talmud lomar b'mayim. Therefore, the pasuk says in the water. Iba mayim, yochel b'mayim v'lo bedam. See if it says the water, maybe you just have to go ahead and dip. But let's remember again, what are we dipping? Living bird, crimson, cedar, hyssop, crimson wool. I just like saying those words. They sound like very crimson and hyssop. Good. And even hyssop and frankincense are the 2 best words, right, of the Masechta so far. Good. Says the Gemara. So what happens? So that's what you're dipping over here. So if it says water, you might have thought just water and not in the blood. Badam. So we'll say, so I understand. So the problem is we seem to have contradictory inferences. Sometimes we're saying dip it in the water, dip it in the blood. So how do you reconcile this? Maybe mayim shedam tzipor nikar bahem. You bring water, right? You have to have spring water, but it has to be enough water or not too much water. That's what? That the blood will still be recognizable in the water itself. Vikama. So we'll say, how much water is that? To make sure that the blood will still be recognizable in it. revius. So we'll say that's how much water you go ahead and you bring for the mitzorah, right? A revius of water. A revius of water. That ensures that when the blood of the slaughtered bird is received in that kli with the water, ultimately, again, the blood still remains visible. V'Rabbanan. What do the Rabbanan do with this pasuk? Hahula gufei. Hula gufei. Ultimately, again, the pasuk is going to teach us the ikra halacha. This is what the pasuk is saying. Itbil b'dam ubamayim. Right? Go ahead and dip the bird together with the cedar, hyssop, and scarlet wool, together in the blood and the water. Rabbi Shmuel, im kein lichtov rachmana v'taval bahem. Rabbi Shmuel said, if that's the case, the Torah could have just said v'taval bahem, immerse in them, b'dam ubamayim lamali. Why does the Torah dafka have to say in the blood and in the water? Linikar, to teach us that the blood must remain recognizable even when mixed in with the water. But the Rabbanan will say, Ikasav Rachmana v'taval bahem, if the Torah would have just said, immerse it in them, Hava Amina, Hailuchudei, V'Hailuchudei. I might have thought that's what Rabbi will say. I might have thought that's what? You have two utensils, two kalim, one of blood, one of water, and what do you have to do? You have to dip the components in each one. Therefore, Kasav Rachmana b'dam u'b'mayim la'arvan. Therefore, the Torah teaches us, no, b'dam u'mayim, to teach us that what? You have to go ahead and mix them together. Rabbi Shmuel says, Rabbi Shmuel, la'arvan krach riniksiv. To teach us that they mix together, that's a different pasuk. What does the pasuk say? V'shachan es hatzipora achas. Fine, a different pasuk. Rabbanon, imeahu, if you want to learn how to have to mix them together from that pasuk, hava amina lishchete samuch lamana. I would have thought, well, this is very interesting. I would have thought maybe you shecht the bird next to the utensil. V'naktinu livridin. Right after you shecht it, squeeze the vridin. We'll say the vridin are the veins through which the blood spurts out. Right. So pinch them. V'lekable dam b'mana achrina, and receive the blood in a different utensil. Kamash malo know that when we shecht the bird, we receive the blood directly into the utensil. Okay, fine. By Rabbi Zera, great Gemara. By Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asked from Rabbi Zera, Gidola umatras hamayim. What happens if you have What happens if you have an especially large bird, and therefore there's so much blood that it eclipses the presence of the water, or for that matter, kitana v'nitchis mipnei hamayim, or for that matter, again, maybe you have a very small bird, and as a result, what happens? It's a very small bird, and as a result, ultimately, again, the water eclipses the blood. Mahu, what do you do in a situation like this? So we'll say, this is such a great answer. Rabbi Zera says, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amarlei, lava min alacha. How many times have I told you? Lo seifuk nafshik libar nafshicha libar mehilchasa. Literally, again, do not question the chachamim. After all, but sipar durar shirabanan. There's a specific bird that was used for the mitzorah process called the tzipar durar. So the Gemara says, shirabanan ein lecha gidol shematches esamayim ve'ein lecha gitana shenitches mipnei hamayim. Ultimately, again, Chazal identified the bird. Ultimately, again, the bird that is used for the mitzvah process, Chazal identified it as the tzipor durar, and the tzipor durar essentially is not too big and it's not too small, right? There's not going to be too much blood that it eclipses the presence of the water, and it's not going to be too small that the water eclipses the presence of the dam. An incredible, so Rabbi Zera essentially saying to Rabbi Yirmiyah, just do what you're told. I'll say, I mentioned this by the Nila Sachag yesterday. A beautiful idea by the Lubavitcher very quickly. Lubavitcher says, by the Chacham, Ma Eidos v'achukim v'amishpat asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu eschem. Right? What are all these different mitzvos? Remember again, Eidos, Chukim, Mishpat refer to different mitzvos. Mishpatim are intuitive mitzvos. Eidos are mitzvos which are not intuitive, but once they're explained, they make sense. And Mishpatim, of course, are mitzvos I don't understand at all. So Lubavitcher says, I don't understand. If the Chacham is a Chacham, then what? He should understand these different mitzvos. So what's his question? The Rebbe says something so beautiful. What do you have to get into what everything means? Just do it. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to do something, just do it. Right? Who says you have to understand? Who says it has to make sense? Just do it. Just be an inspired Jew and just do what you're supposed to do. That's it. So I will say, it's such a beautiful way to live. Now again, Obviously, needs some of both. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us intellect because He wants us to understand things. But there is sometimes a beautiful component in Yiddishkeit that says, just do. Just do. Don't worry about the why. Don't worry about the why. Sometimes the more chacham you become, the more you realize, Ma edos v'achukim v'amishpatim. What do I need? I just want to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's it. So Rabbi Zera says, Rabbi Yirmiyah is going saying, what if the bird's too big? What if the bird's too small? Rabbi Zera says essentially, don't worry about it. I promise you. Chazal have it taken care of. HaKadosh Baruch Hu have it taken care of. The tzipor drar is exactly the right size. Incredible. So Tan Rabbanon, hiktim afar lamayim pasal. What's a very interesting halacha. If you went ahead, I will say, so remember again, the process as we see it by Sotah is, remember what did the Mishnah say? He's taking a kli cheres, right, a earthenware utensil, he's filling it with water from where? From where? Kiyar, excellent, right? And then he's putting the dirt in the water. And I both say, so there's an order. What happens if you reverse the order? Hiktim afar lamayim. What happens if you put the dirt in there before the water? Pasal. Ultimately, again, it's pasal. Rabbi Shimon Machshir. Rabbi Shimon says, no, it's fine. My time with Rabbi Shimon. What's Rabbi Shimon's logic? Because it says by paraduma, the lachula tame me'afar sreifas hachatos. Says you will take for the time for afar. Says v'tanya Rabbi Shimon v'chi afarhu. It's not afar. Avalo afer. It's not afar. We'll say afar is dirt. This is afer. This is ash. Shina hakasa b'mashmo la duna imena gzir shava. Torah is coming along ultimately again to teach us gzir shava. What's gzir shava? Ne'emar kan afar, says over here afar. V'ne'emar lahalon. So it says over here by paraduma afar, and it says by Sotah afar. Ma lahalon afar agabe mayim. Just like by Sotah, you're supposed to put the dirt on top of the water. Afkan afar agabe mayim. Sotah by paraduma, you should put the ash on top of the water. Umakan hiktim afar lamayim kashar. And just like by paraduma, if you place the ash before the water, the process is still kosher. Aflahalon, so to by Sotah, hiktim afar lamayim kosher. Ultimately, again, if you place the ash or you place the dirt before the water is kosher, Aiva Hasam Trey Kraik Sivi, Hasam Minalim. But paraduma, how do you know that if you place the ash before the water, it's still kosher? Two psukim. So ksiv alav, it says on it, alma a febresh, even if you put the ash before the water. Uksiv mayim chayim al keli, and then it says you put the water in first, alma mayim beresh. So by paraduma, I have two psukim, and two psukim teach me either order is fine. Hi, the Gemara says, ha ketzad, ratza zeno sein, ratza zeno sein, ratza zeno sein. You can go and put everyone you want. Go say very quickly, Rabbanon, El Keli, Rabbanon say El Keli dafka, means to teach you that the water has to come first and the ash second. Alav, what does alav teach me? La'arvan, that you have to mix them together. I ve'ima alav dafka. So El Keli shetechi yusan bekli. Maybe El Keli teaches that halacha l'maisa. You have to pour the spring water directly into the kli and not into a second kli and then into the kli. Mamatzinu b'chol makom machshir l'mayla avka machshir l'mayla. Both in general, we find that the item, what we call the machshir. They both say that machshir is the item that kind of affects the process. The machshir always goes on top. So to salach, I apologize with this quickly. So let's say salach l'maisa. How do we paskin? This is very important. So remember again, the process outlined in the Mishnah is water first and then dirt. Salach l'maisa. What happens if you reverse the order? So the Rambam paskins hiktim afar l'mayim psula. If you went ahead and you put in the dirt before you put in the water, ultimately again it's pasul. The order is specific, like the Mishnah outlined. First water, and then the dirt is introduced. Rabbi Zai, shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom. A good Shabbos, everyone. So good to see everyone here. Beautiful. Hope everyone had a beautiful Yom Tov. Morning, man.
Question.
Sure.
You done with them?
Never done with them, but yes.
I always thought that the general, the